Well, folks, some of you know that we enjoy a solid video game, and our guest today has actually been a very big part of several titles that you're probably familiar with. But joining us today is our friend Jesse Sosa. He's been a character artist, UI artist, lead character artist too, if you can keep me honest, Jesse, and recently art director and outsource manager. So you've been absolutely climbing through the ranks and quarterbacking a lot of the design process. So I'd like to welcome to the show, of course. I know I mentioned him once, but Jesse Sosa, welcome to Digital Dissection. How are we doing tonight?
Doing well, doing well. Yeah, I've done pretty much everything in this industry. There's a lot of stuff even on my LinkedIn that isn't necessarily uh outlined, but I started as a concept artist, character artist, and I've gone through, went up lead artist, became art directed a full studio, started a studio down in Brazil, started my own little studio, kind of just make my own games. I've been a voice actor. I've done programming. I've done coding for shaders. I've done scripting, creative director, writing, pretty much everything you could think of. I've done a lot of it. I mean, you're talking about 20 and a half years of professional experience. So it's quite a bit.
Yeah, it sounds like you could just make a video game on a whim. You have that much experience doing that right now.
Yeah.
It's like if you needed a game, you just make it.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I was doing right before the podcast. I'm working on a demo for my side studio. Just trying to get something picked up so we can keep working. Over COVID, I've made 2 games already. Just they're just stuck
Excellent.
in publisher hell like always.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting career. It's a lot of fun. I'm still not quite sure what I want to do when I grow up, but for right now, games are fine. Um, yeah, like I want to make toys. I want to make uh, cartoons and all that stuff. Comic books, everything. I want to be in movies, that kind of stuff. So
Yeah,
lots of stuff to do.
Yeah.
that's awesome. I
So-
mean, when you mentioned rising through the ranks, folks that didn't like hear obviously our pre-conversations that Jesse mentioned, just like with Highlander, he had to kill the people that had the position before, and he consumed their spirit. There can
Yeah.
only be one Jesse.
It's yeah. I mean, yeah. Like at Gearbox, I think we have one other Jesse, and it's really weird. So I'm used to always being the only Jesse in the room. So it's bizarre. Yeah. So how are you guys doing tonight?
Well, great.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've been doing pretty well because this week I didn't have a hospital stay, but I did manage to cut my hand halfway open.
Yeah, I
which
heard that.
Oh, Mark.
just
Mark.
Yep. If you're not dizzy, you're dropping things on yourself.
oh yeah, I'm just cutting on myself with broken glass. I don't know how that started, but yes, happy to be standing up straight. How about
Time to
everybody
bring
else?
out the bubble. Time to
Yeah.
bring out the bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Well, you know, Jesse, we want to thank you for joining us, and it's really cool how the folks come through this program of ours, or program as we like to say.
Programs. Yes.
Yeah, and especially from a video game standpoint, because like you mentioned, there's so many different hats that you have to wear. I wouldn't just say to survive, but just because that's how the creative process works. I'm sure some of it's probably by design, some of it probably isn't, but I'm always happy to talk to creators in your industry, because I mean you have a ton of stories to tell, and in this case what we're interested in starting off with is learning a little bit about where you got your start here, right?
Right.
How your journey into the industry began, because from what we've heard, I mean your 3D design experience really started in what, 98?
Yeah, technically, I mean, I actually started as a programmer. So I started my first game that I ever did. I programmed when I was in high school. Back in my what was it? I think junior year. We were allowed to take college courses as in lieu of physical education and some of these other electives, and so one of them was programming and learning basic and C plus and all that stuff. And
Mhm.
So I was really interested in that. That was in 90, 94, 95. And my friends and I, we had always talked about wanting to make video games. I mean, I remember the first game I ever designed was in fourth grade on graphing paper. It was a
Wow.
G.I. Joe top-down game. It was very similar to Ikari Warriors, and so I laid out all this graph paper and I would draw the the characters, GI Joe characters, and I would just draw the entire map. And my friends, because I was an artist, and my friends that couldn't draw, they would sit there and they would give me ideas, and I would draw the little bad guys in the tanks and all this stuff, and I'd be like, this is how the game's going to work. It's just
Mhm.
paper design. But I think it was the summer of '93. Yeah, I think it was the summer of '93. I got my first 386 computer for my sister, who I would go to my sister's house in Houston over the summers, and I bought myself like a DOS for Dummies book. And part of it in there was it kind of went over the very basic programming language in DOS. And so it taught me some little things like how to manipulate the computer speaker, how to draw
Mhm.
text onto the screen and all that. And so I think it was my junior year, the summer before my junior year, she gave me the 386 because she knew that I was going to become a junior and a senior, and I was going to have to be writing papers and all this stuff. And little did she
Mhm.
know that she really like kicked off my career, because I learned basically how to do pixel art, in MS Paint. So I got pretty damn good at doing pixel art with that. Um, and the other thing too is I spent a lot of money and bought a scanner, so I was actually able to scan and color
Oh.
and learn how to manipulate photos. But I did program my first game, which was very simple. It was a text adventure. Um, and it was but I scored the music that started it up. I had an animated ASCII sword that came down, and then you hit enter, and then you had story that came out, and you would go on an adventure. You had a couple decisions you would make. You'd run into an enemy, you'd fight it, and that was
Yeah.
basically the extent of the game. And I was like I think that was '95 or so. So when the opportunity came up to take programming classes, I jumped on that opportunity. Like I just jumped at it. Me and my other friends, like I said, we all wanted to make video games. At the time, it
Mhm.
was Super NES. I think the PlayStation had
Yeah.
was on the verge of coming out. So uh, took some programming classes, was fairly okay at it. Like I wasn't the worst in the class, but I certainly wasn't the best either. I was in the middle, maybe just a little bit better than the middle, but or
Mhm.
than the average, I say. But what ended up happening was just one day, this is after like taking the class for most of the year. I was just sitting in there and I was just drawing, and we were taking a test, I think, if I recall correctly, because our teacher was walking around. So I want to say we were taking a test, and I had finished, and my teacher comes up to me, my programming instructor comes up to me, and he's just like, "Hey, Jesse, what do you want to do when you grow up?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." Or he asked me something about like, "What do you want to do with programming when you grow up?" or something like that. And I said, "Well, I don't know. I want to make video games." And he's like, "Okay." He's like, "Well, what do you want to do when it comes to video games?" And I was like, you know, I I would love to program them and all that. He goes, because you draw in my class a lot. He goes, have you ever
Yeah.
considered making art as a career? And I was like, no, not
Mhm.
really. I'm like, it takes a programmer to make games, right? Because I was used to 16-bit SNES at the time.
Mhm.
And he's like, well, yeah, but things are changing now. He goes, a lot of a lot of game studios now, they're starting to need artists and everything. It's not just programmer art anymore. And I kind of stopped and thought about that, and I had never really considered it. And so that was basically the big changer there that made me realize that instead of doing programming, I was going to want to do art for a living. So I had to figure out what that meant. And so
Mhm.
when one of my best friends, pretty much the one that taught me like how to draw, kind of, or at least pointed me in a good direction. We used to draw Image comics all the time, like it was all about Spawn and
Mhm.
stuff. and
Oh yeah.
and so he was basically my partner in art. We did everything together with artwork. He basically said, "Hey, there's this college out there. It's called the Art Institute, and they're going to be coming down to one of the local cities, and let's go check them out." And so we went and checked it out, and I was sold, and he wasn't. He was afraid of debt and all that stuff, and it was an expensive school at the time. I mean, who wouldn't want their college to only be $24,000 nowadays? But back then it was like a whopping 30 some $1,000 if you stayed on. I think now they're like up in the 100,000. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and
Wow.
so I was sold. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. This is exactly what I want. They were showing like working in 3D and all that stuff, and I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. And so I had the Houston school and the Dallas school, and I was like, well, Houston's fine, but it seems like Dallas has better hardware, better computers. And I was like, it's the furthest thing away from my hometown as possible. So I was like, fuck it, let's just go out there.
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, so as soon as I graduated, I moved to Houston and I started working 6 months before my start date in Dallas. And I just tried to save as much money as I could, which, I started paying my tuition 6 months before I went to school.
Wow.
But I did apply for, I did get some kind of scholarship, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember. It wasn't a lot, but it was just something. I submitted a portfolio and all that for it. And so, yeah, it came January 1998, and I just moved to Dallas. My parents dropped me off, and that was the scariest day of my life. I'd always been surrounded by like a dozen friends or so in high school, and this was just like I had enough money in my pocket to make my next payment, and that was it. And I
Wow.
remember I was terrified, being in Dallas. My parents, they could only afford to drive me up, drop me off, and leave. And so I sat there in the apartment, and I just cried, and I told myself, I said, I'm going to allow myself to cry today, and that's it. And then tomorrow we're going to get on this and figure this out. And so, yeah,
Nice.
so the next day I just went and got a job at PCBY, and had that job for like a month, and got a job at I was like little, it wasn't Little Caesars, it was Mr. Gaddy's. Yeah, and I only had that job for a couple weeks, and then I was walking back from quitting to Mr. Gaddy's. It was disgusting. I couldn't serve that food to people. They were breaking all kinds
Oof.
of, yeah, they were breaking all kinds of health code violations.
Oh,
Oh
And
no,
yeah, it was
Ramsey's
awful.
nightmare.
Not a
Yeah.
sponsor, by the way. Not a
Uh,
sponsor of the
No,
show.
no.
We're just
I
putting that out
just
there.
Kitchen Nightmare is not a sponsor of the podcast.
yeah, it was so bad. It was like a moral dilemma for me. And so I said,
Ooh.
screw this, I had to leave.
Nope.
And
Better
so
not.
on the way back, I was just like, I was terrified again, because I had just started school. It was barely about a month and a half in Dallas, and I had enough money to pay like my next couple payments, but that was it. And I was just fearing that I failed, because I needed a job. Like that was always my priority. And on the way back, I saw a restaurant between Mr. Gaddy's and my apartment, and I was like, let me just stop in here. And I saw they had a hiring sign up front, and I sat down, and there was a man that came up to me, and he greeted me, and I was like, hey, you guys hiring, and he's like, yeah, he was real kind, and he asked me a lot of questions, just a lot about my life story and stuff. And I was just telling him basically this, like how I was scared and everything, and I have all these dreams and ambitions, and I just want to hit them, but I
Mhm.
know I need a job. And he's like, "Yeah, let me get you some food." He's like, "What do you want?" And I was looking at the menu, and I was just
oh,
like, "I just want a burger. I'm hungry. I don't really have a lot of money." And he's like, "Okay, no problem." And he went back to the back. He made me a burger, everything. He came back and he put it. And he just kept asking me questions. And when I was finishing my burger, he goes, "Can you start, next week or whatever, or tomorrow?" I forget what it was. It was really soon. And I was like, "Oh hell yeah, like that's cool." And that job saved my life. That I had that job for
oh,
3 years basically, working at Texadelphia here in Dallas, and I went from just washing
Cool.
dishes to being a store manager. And that
Wow.
that played a key role in actually getting me a job in the game industry, because I went to the art institute for a while, and after some time, like I moved up. One of my friends from high school, who also wanted to make games, and he me and him, we realized that we weren't learning anything from the art institute. Like it was good, we learned a lot of fundamentals, but then
Mhm.
after you get
Yeah.
past a certain point, it was all about like teaching you how to make cartoons for Johnny Neutron, and working for DNA Productions on Johnny
mm-hmm.
Neutron, Jimmy Neutron, sorry.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't really want to make that. I want to make video games, because at the time, Final Fantasy VII was fresh. It was like 8 months
Yeah.
to a
Mm-hmm.
year out,
Mhm.
and then Metal Gear Solid had just come out too. So those games were within a year of release, and I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to make that. I want to make low poly character art. And so me and him, we got on a forum called polycount.com, and it was in its infancy. It had just been. It used to be. Q2 PMP, I believe is what it was. So they used to do a bunch of Quake 2 skins and all that. And so we got on there to do Quake 3 stuff, Quake 3 Arena. And we formed a team called Team Dallas, and we just started making skins. The first anime skin in Quake 3 was our Vash the Stampede skin.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we had a skin for an original character that when you would kill him, like he would split in half and his legs would walk one way and his torso would crawl another, which is the first one to do that. It had 2 rigs within itself. So we were always trying to push what we can do. And we just got noticed. And by a certain point in time, we quit the Art Institute. We dropped out. Both of us did. And we were terrified because, again, this was another scary point where we were like, we can become statistics, right? We can become these college dropout kids that are just going to move back home with our parents. And so luckily I had that job at Texadelphia, and I was a manager or assistant manager at that point. And I said, look, man, I'm going to front load your entire week. I'm going to give you like 3 or 4 doubles in a row. That way you'll have 3 to 4 days at the end of it. I think it was 3 doubles in a row. So he can make all the money he needs to pay rent and everything. And he had 4 days to just focus on his portfolio. And so he's like, okay, let's do it. And I front loaded his schedule, and he did that. And within 3 months, he got his first job at Mesa Logic. They did the Area 51 arcade cabinets and stuff like that. Yeah, we had another friend at the Art Institute who was offered a job there, but he wanted to graduate. So he said, oh, let me show you my friend Juan. And so Juan jumped in, and boom, he got hired immediately. So when he got hired, this was already early 2001, as I did Texadelphia for 3 years. He told me, he just looked over, he goes, okay, now it's your turn. He's like, quit Texadelphia, I'll pay your bills. Just get like a little side full part-time job just to pay like your car rent or whatever, but I'll pay rent, all this stuff. I'll pay your cell phone bill, everything. Okay, cool. I did that, and then 3 months later, I got in at Mumbo Jumbo down in Dallas, just because of our reputation of making stuff and not stopping. And so that's kind of like the short version, basically, of just how I got in. It was just like these real pivotal moments in time where I could have run away. I mean, I remember there was a lot of times when I was in Dallas. Again, I'm a bit of an introvert, and I have a lot of social anxiety. So when I first arrived at the Art Institute, I was really anxious, and I found it very difficult to make friends. And so there was a large part there where I was really alone. You get all these like thoughts in your head, suicide and all this and that, because you just feel like no one's there for you, and no one cares. And being in a big city away from your family for the first time ever, and all your friends who were pretty much your life. I grew up in a tiny town, so all my friends were people that I literally grew up with from like preschool all the way up to graduating. And at that point in time, everything is the most important thing ever when you're in high school. And
of course,
you just think that there's nothing else. And so there was a lot of times where I almost gave up, but I never did. I always found a reason to keep going. And that's kind of, there was some very pivotal moments where everything could have gone wrong, but they didn't. And so I lucked out with a lot of that stuff. But yeah, and getting at Mumbo Jumbo, I was there for a year, and then my roommate Juan, he started working at Terminal Reality. Well, he went Terminal Reality. Then I got into Terminal Reality. He went to Ritual. Then he came back to Terminal Reality. Then he went to Ensemble, and then I went to Austin. And he's, we've always just been crossing paths and stuff our entire career. But it's just very interesting to see like our careers, how we helped each other get in, and it's just been pretty awesome, honestly.
You remind me of like Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, coming together and I wouldn't say challenging each other, but like helping each other grow, incrementally through that. And that's actually a really cool story, Jesse. Like I just gotta say, like it's inspirational to hear that, because like being a military brat, I felt very similar things to you, kind of hitting that reset button and not having a support structure in place. And so it's really inspiring to hear, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. One thing I did want to pull out of the ether, it might seem kind of random right now, but throughout this journey that you've mentioned, where did the prop building side of this come in? Because I heard that you built props for a little bit too.
I mean, it's always part of the creative side, right? Like I do things with my hands, whether it's with a mouse and a keyboard or making stuff by hand. It's something that I haven't done too much of recently, but I really do miss doing that. I had made some really good prop making friends during the Ghostbuster years, because Ghostbusters is all about props and
completely.
getting
Yeah.
those props down. And so there was a lot of that in there. I've always just worked with my hands. Like I don't find it any different to sculpt something in 3D as I do, sculpting something in real life. It's the same thing with painting. I know you can
Yeah.
get spoiled by it. Like I don't like painting with like oils or anything like that, because I can't undo, essentially. Like I can't make a mistake and then kind of smooth it over or whatever. Some of those paints,
Yeah.
like you got to commit. And it's the kind of same thing with sculpting in real life. You start committing. Nowadays it's a little bit easier. It's not necessarily easier, but now I can make all my mistakes digitally and have all that stuff printed out, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
whether I'm making props and stuff in real life or digitally, I think the same way. When I make props digitally, I try and make sure that they function properly, that they have thought behind that there's reason behind whatever it is on the prop. It needs to be there, for a reason. It's functional stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's art every day, all day kind of thing. That's what I do.
Yeah, no,
Nice.
your comment on like not being able to erase when you're painting, I have that same frustration. Like I hate painting for the life of me. I love drawing, love sketching, love making and building things. When it comes to painting, I'm like, nope, that's permanent. I made a mistake. Looks like we're throwing this whole canvas out and we're starting over again because I don't know what else to do.
I mean,
Yeah.
I started welding when I was 11 or 12.
Oh, nice.
Back home, they teach you all this stuff real early, and we had shop
Mhm.
class when we were in junior high, and they taught us how to weld, how to do all the wood cutting and everything like that. So having a shop is something I've always wanted. I'm trying to get back in a house so I can have a good garage shop, and start
Mhm.
doing that stuff again. But haven't done anything recently because living an apartment life and stuff is just
Yeah.
it's different.
Yep, know what
Yeah.
that's like.
It's hard to weld in an apartment for sure.
A little bit.
I absolutely love living in an apartment. Like I don't give a shit. Like for me, I don't ever have plans of being a homeowner. I just don't want that maintenance. Like I don't
Oh,
want the
really?
responsibility of
Well.
maintenance. Not at all.
Oh,
I
dude.
like I have so many horror stories of people moving into their new house, and then it's like, oh, summers here in Texas are brutal, and it's just like, oh, the summer hit, my air conditioning's dead. I gotta buy a $20,000 system or whatever.
Hey,
Exactly.
no,
Yep.
you know
But
what?
that
You know what? You're gonna look forward to it one day, Jesse, because there are things like a hole in a roof that you have to repair, or the drywall that gets ruined, or the gutter that gets stuck that you have to dig a trench for and lift a 400-pound rock out of manually to get it out of the way.
You
As you
are really
mentioned.
selling this, man.
Yeah.
Wait, is that what I was
You
doing?
have definitely talked Jesse into buying a house for the manual labor alone.
Oh,
yeah, I
I
mean,
set myself up there.
just this past like Texas freeze that we had.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
God, yeah.
Yeah, my friend Juan just sent me some photos of his attic. Apparently, there's a hole in his attic, and he was just like, "Yeah, we saw some water or something." So we went up there, and it's just snow inside his entire. And it was just
Oh,
like,
no.
whoa. I mean, I don't have problems
Oh.
renting. Like, sure, I'll rent a house. I like to move now. After living in Brazil for a bit, like, I'm like, why the
Yeah.
hell do I want to stay here? Like,
Yeah.
I'm fine. Yeah, let's do the Gearbox thing for a while, but I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years. I might get the itch to go live somewhere else in another country, start a studio somewhere else. I don't know. So I'm not.
Yeah.
I have my wife has a I have the my luggage, and she gets after me because I never put it away. And I'm like, yeah, but we're about to go on a trip, so it's a good thing I never put it away, right? Like it's
just
there,
right
it's ready.
Yeah,
But,
it's just like when I was saying, like, when I was smoking and I said I could quit at any time or something, or somebody would say, hey, did you quit smoking? And I went, oh yeah, I did totally quit. And I went like, but for 5 minutes.
But
Right?
when
Or
for 5 minutes, or when you're dressed as a Ghostbuster, it's kind of just part of the costume. It's
yeah,
just-
right. Like
Yeah, it
I
is.
quit smoking for an hour, right?
Well,
so
I
I quit
mean-
traveling for a week. I'm gonna go out another week. Yeah, come on, we're gonna be there.
I mean, the Ghostbusters technically haven't been smoking since '84 or
No.
whatever. Like,
It's
it's
true.
been a big
Yeah.
big no-no.
Yeah, they found out some health risk or something. I just, it came out of nowhere. I had no idea it was coming.
But
Wait, smoking's bad for you?
that's weird. My doctor always recommends the same brand when I go.
Man, I
Yeah.
do not like Ghostbusters 2. I just don't.
Mhm.
I've never have. I'm just one of those people. When I was a kid, I was like, there's something bad about this. Like
Yeah.
I enjoyed it a little bit, but
Mhm.
man, nowadays I'm just like, wow, this is cringy as hell to watch.
Ooh.
Was it the
It's
lack of
just-
smoking, Is that what you
Yeah.
think killed? Yeah.
No,
It
man,
just,
it was
we're missing that coolness, the coolness factor.
Yeah. They felt like
It was-
bad boys
it's-
in the first one, right? And the second one, they're like, they're dads now. Oh, come on. I don't
it's
want
the
this.
it's the kidification, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm fine with
Yeah.
making stuff for
Mhm.
kids, and that's one of my main focuses. I want to make entertainment for my little nieces and stuff. But it's one of those where that franchise I don't think ever needed to be, not the movie franchise at least, didn't need to be
Mhm.
for kids. It was good for everyone.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay, smoking, whatever. Like that doesn't make or break the Ghostbusters, but just everything else in that movie did. And it was
Mhm.
really a product of RGB, right? Like RGB was fantastic.
Yeah.
I used to come
Oh
home,
yeah.
I used to sit down and eat my
Mhm.
cereal after school and watch RGB, and I would just be like so into it. Well, I fucking hated when it became, Slimer in the real Ghostbusters. Like
Oh
that
yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
There's like
Mhm.
one
They're
or two
definitely
really good ones in there,
lame.
but
Mhm.
oh my god, like once Slimer started talking, like throw that shit out the window. I hated that.
Hey, do you
Um,
know what the story is behind why that happened?
I mean, I remember something about Michael J. Straczynski.
Yeah.
Once he was kind of taken out of it, but it's been a long time. If you want to go over it, let's go over it.
Oh, just really quickly, like for folks that have, because we covered the real Ghostbusters actually, like in part of like our revisiting Ghostbusters 101 in time for Afterlife. But what happened to the real Ghostbusters cartoon was the studio back then, which was comprised of Deke Enterprises and then ABC and then the Coca-Cola telecommunications company. They brought in this advisor who said, okay, we need to look at what we can do to make Ghostbusters more kid friendly.
Yeah.
And what did they
Stupid
do?
Coca-Cola.
Oh, this advisor came in and said, let's take Janine and turn her from an independent and like really good influence
Oh,
for
mother.
girls, young women, and
Mhm.
turn her into the character that she became in GB2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, we want to get rid of Ray Stantz. Who's this Ray Stantz guy? Let's just get rid of him completely. They had to fight to keep
Right.
him, by the way.
Right.
And then they said, hey, Junior Ghostbusters, let's bring him on in. We need
Yeah.
kids to see.
Hate the
Junior,
Junior
so
Ghostbusters.
stupid.
I hate them so
Yeah.
much. I hate each and every single one of them.
Good kids.
God, I hate those kids. I hate them so much.
And then when the whole thing went belly up, they're like, well, how about we just make a show about a sea lab that
Oh.
moves and Slimer can be the voice of the dolphin.
Hey, why not? Why
Why
not?
not?
Make
Well-
worse decisions.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So for those I guess that are listening in, we met because I made a comment on. I'm a retro game collector, and I made a comment on one of the forums. I think it was I forget which one it was. It was one of the Dallas area ones, and he was just like, "Oh my God, the art in the Ghostbusters is so good, right?" And I said, "Well, we had a great team," and so that kind of started the whole conversation that we had. Found out that I worked on Ghostbusters and all that, which is what brings me here as well. Um, Various other reasons too, but that was one of the primary reasons. So yeah, I consider myself a ghost head, but a little bit more on the casual side. I'm not as hardcore as some of the fans that I know. Working on the game has really made me very knowledgeable about a lot of stuff. But I was a ghost head growing up. I don't remember when I watched the first movie. I was young. I think I was like 5 years old when it came out.
Mhm.
But I remember I fell in love with it.
Mhm.
I fell in love with RGB. That was amazing. And at the time, Ghostbusters 2, there was something that didn't sit right with me because I was like 10 years old, so I was just starting to be a little bit more critical of things that I was consuming.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I still enjoyed it. It had to go. I love the dark suits. It had the music was amazing. I freaking love that soundtrack. It had a lot of stuff that I really loved. And then when I got to college, I bought a bunch of the RPG books, and I don't really tabletop too much, but I love having them for reference, and I love just like looking through. So I was like looking through all those old
Mhm.
RPG books and everything, and so
Yeah.
it was always part of my conscious. I always had like every cover of a song, like I would download it, and I had like a whole bunch of different covers from the metal cover and all this and that of the theme songs and
Nice.
everything. And Extreme
Yeah.
Ghostbusters came out. I fell in love
Oh,
with
yes.
Extreme Ghostbusters.
Great little series.
Oh my
Yes.
God, it's just the man, like the people that don't get it. Like I understand, like you don't get it, that's
Mhm.
fine, but it is such a good series. Like all the cringy stuff aside, because it's still something for kids and all this stuff.
Extreme.
Yeah, but it's just one of
Three.
those, it has a story arc, and it's got things that
Mhm.
it's got character development where RGB, like you could just watch it out of order. There's a couple
Oh, yeah.
two-parters and whatever.
Oh, sure.
And that's
Yep.
okay too, to a certain extent. You just want something, you just put it on, whatever. But Extreme Ghostbusters, I used to wake up. This is right after, I guess this was around 99 or 2000. I used to wake up early
Yeah.
to go to work at Texadophia, and I would turn on the TV, and it was The Adventures of Zorro would come on, and so I would always
Mhm.
catch the
Yes.
very end of Zorro, and then it would go into Extreme Dinosaurs, and then Ghostbusters Extreme.
Yep.
So
Yep.
right when Ghostbusters Extreme was finishing, I was getting ready out the door to go work for the day. So that's the way my morning consisted of that. Very nostalgic for Extreme Ghostbusters. Oh my God,
Oh,
like
dude,
that.
Mhm.
I'm right there with you, Jesse, because for me, when I first saw Extreme Ghostbusters, it wasn't the pilot, but I think I got maybe like 3 or 4 episodes in, and at the very beginning when they redid the intro music, away from the legendary, Ray
Mhm.
Parker Jr. song,
Mhm.
and they did their cover of it. As soon as they started doing the guitar riff,
Yeah.
like the first transition of the
Dun dun
song,
dun 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 dun. Yeah.
oh, and then it's like, and you're just like, oh my God, this is improving upon something I
Yeah.
didn't think could be improved
Yeah.
on.
This is
And
extreme.
oh, I know.
I
Doritos in my rollerblade. Oh my God.
it was perfect. Like that's the type of
Mhm.
music I was listening to during the time. I was really into all that new metal and Marilyn
Yeah.
Manson stuff and everything like that. That was my main
Dude,
source of music. So when I heard that, I was like, this is amazing.
it was lights
And
out. It was lights out.
Mhm.
I remember I bought the bootlegs. Like I went to a convention, maybe a couple years later, and I found them on DVD, burnt DVDs, and I had to just buy the whole set because they just weren't. Shout Factory wasn't around during that
They
time,
weren't. No.
and it was just
Yeah.
like I need to consume this. I had my Batman 1966 bootlegs. I had my Get Smart
Mhm.
bootlegs. I had like just all these bootlegs of this stuff. And Ghostbusters, Extreme Ghostbusters, one of my first ones where I was just like, I need to have this show because I never finished it. It was just whatever I could consume that was on TV, but
Mhm.
they didn't necessarily always play them in order. And
No.
yeah, and so I sat down and marathoned it. So when Ghostbusters landed on our lap, it was 2005. We were rolling off of Aeon Flux, and I was on
Ooh.
a team that was doing like I had just done Grandma's Boy, and I was on a rapid prototype team. So we were doing like Star Wars, we were doing Metal Slug, and we were doing there was there's one other
Was
one,
it,
and the other
was
team was
Spy
working on
Hunter?
Demonic. Well, Spy Hunter was another project, but
Okay.
that was coinciding along with like I helped finish Spy Hunter. That wasn't my
Sure.
main project. But we were on a rapid prototype team making all these things for the PSP and everything coming out and all that. And then when Ghostbusters came out and we were doing the because we had to stay quiet about it for freaking like 2 years.
Yeah.
We couldn't say we were working on it or anything, but everything started with a green light process at the beginning of 2006. So we ramped up to 2006, and we hit the ground running with a 6 month green light process, which it was us and several other studios that were going for this. And so we all had to make a demo of how we envisioned Ghostbusters, and we had to make a game mechanic and all that for it. I wish you guys could see that. Portion of that actually made it into the final game, but the entirety of that, that's actually one thing I don't have. I wish I had it. I might have the video somewhere. I need to go through my archives, but um, we like the first thing I did was I brought in all my material. I went to eBay. I bought every single Ghostbusters game I could. I had all that imported. I bought RGB on bootlegs that I came and I ripped and put on our network. Extreme Ghostbusters ripped and put on our network. I bought I love the 90s from 19 well I bought I brought in, I love 1988 through 1993 because we were existing in the middle. So it was like all these trends
Yeah.
and stuff to get people in the mood. And I just brought all this reference material in. I bought, someone on eBay had reference for the Universal Studios Ecto one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
yeah, and I
Yes.
bought that. I bought that. He had all these photos. It was on CD, so I bought that and I brought that in. And same thing with the packs. I just bought a bunch of stuff and I just brought it all in and I put it up on the network to just get everyone thinking, in that way. And I was ready. Like it was literally like I wouldn't want to say a dream come true. There's other properties I enjoy probably a little bit more as well, but Ghostbusters was real high on my list of making new content. That's important. Making new content in
Yeah.
in a world that I enjoy being in, right? So it's like getting to play with all of these toys that I enjoyed, um, and so that
Yeah.
was a blast, and I it was unlike anything I ever got to do. There's a lot goes into making your own IPs and your own stories and stuff, but when you get to work on
Yeah.
something like that you've always loved, it's fantastic. But at the same time, it made me freaking hate it as well because when you see how the sausage is made, like you probably don't want to eat hot dogs anymore. And so once I saw the spaghetti that was the Ghostbusters license, like I was just like, this is
Oh,
awful.
this is
This
nuts.
is
Yeah.
Mm,
Well,
like
one.
let us just make a fun game. I don't want to
Yeah.
put up with all this bullshit. Like let me make a fun game. That's all I wanted to do.
And one of the things that I thought was crazy about the in the Ghostbusters video game, in your time at Terminal, was that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jesse, but from what I remember reading, you didn't actually have like facial capture, like motion capture or anything to work from, right? Like, didn't you have to create like the actual like face designs and everything? Like that was basically from your own interpretation, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. You're talking about like 3D scanning and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So by the time that came up, I was not the lead character artist when we first started. We had hired another guy to be the lead character artist on it, and then he was only there for a
Mhm.
bit. Then he left, and so they made our one of the senior character artists into the lead role, and he didn't like it, so he left. And so at that point, I was like, stop doing that. Like I'll do it, right? Like you need to find someone that wants to do it. You shouldn't be hiring your best artist to be a lead artist. It should just be the people that are meant for management. And so,
Yeah.
um, we had hired one of the guys from EA Vancouver, which they do a bunch of the soccer stuff, and
Mhm.
he was real
Mhm.
good at doing faces. And so we created this whole camera rig and stuff. And so what we did was went over to a movie trading company, and I bought everything that the characters or all the actors were in between that time frame 88 to 94. Bought everything
Yeah.
they had, brought it in, put the DVDs in. We took screenshots of as many face shots as we could, and we built this system which should be on video somewhere. I think I have a video of it somewhere, but it's you drop in all these planes in Maya, and you put the screenshots on them, and then you have all these cameras that face the screenshots at all times, and then you adjust the focal length and distance of the camera to compensate for the perspective in the shot, so that you're making all those shots orthographic. And um, and so we ended up with a base character head that was really nice topology, and then we would have all these planes of the actors faces everywhere. And so we had a facial rig that would allow us to morph and move the face around. And so we would just kind of move it and adapt, and we'd switch from camera to camera, and we would just massage it until it looked like them. And then we would take that
Yeah.
into, at the time, Mudbox, and we would do all the facial detail moles and everything like that were specific to that actor, wrinkle lines, all this stuff, smile lines, everything. And then we'd export that. And so we had like a single face that we can morph target between everyone's likenesses, so we could just make whoever we wanted. If we had an Egon slider, right, we slide it all the way and it would turn into him. But if we wanted to like a
hmm.
mixture of Egon and Ray, we'd slide them both over, and then you can see like the approximation between them two. It was really
Oh.
Yeah.
really interesting. uh, and that was a really good system, but of course that was before 3D scanning and stuff. And so
Mhm.
Yeah.
we had that's basically what we did for all the major characters that were likenesses in that project. um we made everything just really modular and just tried our best to do as many characters as they wanted with the small team that we had.
Yeah.
Um, it was fun. It was very educational, very good, and that was my first foray into being an actual lead. Um, but yeah, it as much as I loved it, it was a 3-year project, and that really wore on me, man. It's hard working on something for 3 years.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I didn't. This is something I actually wanted to ask you about because we kind of mentioned it, but your time working on the Grandma's Boy, Eternal Death Slayer concept. You mentioned working on something for 3 years. It's curious to find out how long it took you to work on the Eternal Death Slayer, whether it was a fully functional game or if you developed aspects of it for Grandma's Boy just to be seen, at those strategic points in the movie.
So Eternal Death Slayer. So for Grandma's Boy, we did a total of, I guess it was 2 different projects because we were working on Demonic at the time, and I had created
Mhm.
the main demon Demonic, and and my other character artist created the Protection Demonic, um, and made like just a bunch of characters in there. So we had just rolled off Aeon Flux, and it was right before we went into demo mode, and we had just I was tasked to redo the rock for Spy Hunter, so I redid the rock and his designs, his disguises,
Mhm.
and then I went to Demonic. I made the main Demonic. My counterpart did the Protection Demonic. We did some of the security guards and other elite guards, and then we went
Mhm.
into developer stuff. So Demonic was being produced while we were working on Aeon Flux. I might have my timeline kind of mixed up, but because it was
Mhm.
during Aeon Flux, because when it came down to it at the last minute, we were offered, we all got a day off of work, and they said, well, we're all going to go as a group to watch Aeon Flux or Grandma's Boy. And so we're like, we're gonna go watch Grandma's Boy because it was me and a couple friends of ours that worked on Grandma's Boy. So we went and watched.
Mhm.
Everyone else went and watched Day on Flux, which we chose the better of the 2 movies, honestly. And but my part of Grandma's Boy was about 2 to 3 weeks, and then everything else was like, I mean, in total, it was about a month and a half for Eternal Death Slayer. Um, it was I took a lot of my Blood Rain stuff and I reskinned it, and I made just a couple characters overnight, like just that I just stuff that I would sketch in high school. So there's a couple characters in there. There's a big dude with metal arms. That's one of my characters from high school. We had the other guy with the hammers as well. Like there was a bunch of those, and so I gave them to my friend. He rigged them up and did an animation. And so we actually have a game engine. For some reason, it doesn't start up on my machine. I wish it would still work, but we had a
Mhm.
game engine specifically for that, based on the Aeon Flux engine, and we locked the camera like a fighting game. And so depending on the character that you would load, or the scene that you would load, you could either control the character in a very rudimentary fashion, or you would just hit a button and it would play a canned animation so they can time and pretend that they're playing. And
Sure.
so it was kind of a mix. Like the Blood Rain characters had their full sets of animations, so we made technically a very simple fighting game with them. So you can actually load like Schoolgirl Rain and Feral, and you can actually like fight them and do all that. Uh, but some of the other custom characters that we made, it was just like they push a button and it just starts playing the animation, and then they just played along. I got to make all the
Yeah.
signs and stuff, and anything dealing with Eternal Death Slayer in the office. That's stuff that I made. And yeah, but it was about a
Yeah.
month and a half at the most that we worked on that.
Did you have anything to do with a lion getting on the roof?
On the what now? Sorry.
I think there's a scene in Grandma's Boy where a lion gets on the roof. But yeah, no,
Oh,
that,
no,
that
no,
was
no.
not you, not involved in that. Okay.
No, I was strictly involved with Demonic and Eternal Death
No,
Slayer.
nothing to do with livestock or wild animals in the movie.
It's just
No.
he's a man of many talents. I
Yeah.
did not want to undersell him.
Speaking of animals, Jesse, on the internet, there are many whispers about penguins appearing in your work, and we're interested in knowing where the origins began. is this a design choice, or is this a character from your past? We'd love to expand on that.
Uh, well, I mean, the Penguin came from my first in studio game job. It was called Snowball Run. It was for
Oh,
Mac
yeah,
Play at the time,
yeah, yeah. I
and
played that.
so it's that was my first in-game studio job, and I designed them and everything like that. And so just as an homage for that, I toss him in wherever I can. I know he's definitely into stuff that I have a lot more control over than some of the larger. Like he's not in Borderlands 3. I'm not going to toss him in there because it's too large to do that. Someone will find it and flag it and send it out, and I can get in trouble for that stuff. But like he was basically in every single one. Like he's in my Blood Rain games. He's in Aeon Flux. He's in Grandma's Boy. He's in Ghostbusters. He's in a couple of the games that I've recently done, but they're just in publisher hell on the side. And he's in Desert Bus that I did for Gearbox. He's in um, I think he's in a couple other VR experiences that I did, but yeah, he's just in there. It's just one of those things. Like in Ghostbusters, he's under Ray's bed. He's just kind of shoved under there. It's kind of like a little Easter egg, and so it's one of those. It's one of the many Easter eggs I put into as many games as possible. Uh, yeah, it's
That's
it's
cool.
it's crazy because like even the cosplayers have picked up on it, and so when they do like Schoolgirl Rain, like they have the backpack, the proper backpack with the penguin and stuff, and it's just fun. It's funny like how that came about. But yeah, it's just an homage to my first game character.
That's cool, man. I did. You know what? This is part of our research department, which is comprised of roughly myself and two others. And
Small
I
staff.
I never connected that. That's crazy. I mean, that's awesome. I had no idea, Jesse, we were connected for much longer than I realized. But one thing I did realize that we kind of just glossed over a little bit here was your journey into character development, right? You've talked a little bit about your video game origins and how you got there, but where did the character design necessity come from, and how you just kind of found a home there?
I mean, I've always drawn, right? Like drawing,
Mhm.
I've always like coming up with characters. It's always just been something that I did. I always sucked at drawing backgrounds, so I always just focused on the characters and just kind of did that. I'm real interested in narrative, why characters are the way they are. Telling story with character design, stuff like that. So that's kind of just one of the things that stuck with me. Honestly, it's pretty simple.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I didn't know if there was it maybe like another chance encounter or something that kind of maybe got you into your first one, but it's just been
No,
there since beginning.
yeah, since I was working on Quake 3 Arena, plug-in character models, like that's just what we did. Everyone at that time did character models because it was just so easy to do, and so it was, that's what we got known for, was making very complex, very good-looking character models, and so we got taken in. That was my first job, was working on characters.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. One thing that was really cool about hearing about Dinosaur Games was that a lot of the experiences that you're building out were more like that VR experience level, and so obviously that's a little bit different of an experience, not just for the gamer, but also for you from a development and a design standpoint. So when it went from making let's say console and PC games and then shifting into VR, what kind of steps led to that? I was really wanting to dig into that a little bit more.
Well, I had been hired by Samsung to go start a studio in Brazil, basically like a AAA mobile studio. Tons of freaking money just to make mobile games because Brazil has a real strong mobile market. And this is 2014, and Samsung was developing the Gear VR at the time, so we had prototypes, and they showed it to us, and we're like, can we make a game for this? And they were like, okay, sure. So we took our current game, which is called Finding Monsters at the time, we took it and we converted it over to VR, and won a lot of awards for that. And so we just kept making VR games while I was there, and so I had some friends back home that were working at a local studio here in Dallas. It was kind of like a marketing kind of an installation studio where they go to conventions and they do these big things or whatever. And so they were focused on creating VR installations for companies, VizDev. Like it's just like, oh, we're selling, windows that tint, to big buildings and all that. So can we make a VR experience out of this? It was like, sure, let's do this. And so my VR experience from Samsung just kind of led into that. And so 2016 was just full of VR experiences, and we won a couple of awards. We won awards for our arcade artist, and we got a lot of really great press for our American Horror Story VR experience back in 2016. And then it led to a couple other VR experiences with them, which led me eventually on 2017 having just a random encounter at GDC with my current boss. And he's just like, hey, you do VR? And I was like, yeah, because we have mutual friends and we all went out to dinner, and I sat next to him. And I was like, yeah, and I pulled out my tablet and I played him our demo reel. And he's like, I have a project that, basically if you guys want to work on it. And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. And so that was the Penn and Teller Desert Bus VR. And so when we finished Desert Bus VR, I took a job working on Super Lucky Tale at Playful with my old roommate, and they needed help. So I came in and helped finish that. And my contract was ending, and he's like, our outsource manager left. He goes, and everything that you did he's like, teach us how to do that, how you did it with Desert Bus VR, because Desert Bus VR was just me and one other guy, and I outsourced everything. And I was like, sure. And so I started there at Gearbox, and that's just been where I've been at since. Lots of things I've been able to art direct, a lot of stuff while I'm there, lots of upcoming projects, and it's really given me the opportunity to be the best manager and person that I can be. And so the future is pretty bright, not just for us, or not just for me, but for Gearbox as well. So that's kind of like the VR thing is just one thing. And the whole reason I took the job in Brazil was I found myself again in another turning point in my life where I just wasn't happy with where I currently was, and I had just broken up with my girlfriend at the time, and I had like a cat that had accidentally run away. Like she got out the door and she never came back, kind of thing. And so I was just kind of sitting there after I realized that my ex-girlfriend and I just weren't going to work out. I was visiting. I was out of state visiting her, and I was just like, it was that realization where you're just kind of she was asleep and I was just kind of in the tub, and I'm like, this is just not going to work out. And I got just that email in the middle of the night because it came from South Korea, and it just said, hey, we have a job in Brazil. Do you want to apply? And I just kind of sat there and I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And 3.5 months later, I was in Brazil.
Nice.
It's just, why not?
Yeah,
absolutely. Take those opportunities.
Yeah, for all I know, we go around this whole thing once, and it's just like, why not? I'm not. That was scary again. Like when I got to Brazil, I was just like, what the hell am I doing? What the hell am I doing? But yeah, whatever. At this point, I've been through a lot, so it's just, I didn't cry that time. It was just like, it was.
Well,
just
you
like,
said just once, so
yeah.
You allowed yourself that one time. I assume that's the only time you've ever cried.
And so it's one of those, you can follow back the entirety of like even just to this single moment that we're all sharing. Like you can just pinpoint it and just go far back all these decisions that led to this one singular moment in time. And it's just interesting.
Well, and that's something I wanted to ask you about with your experience at Gearbox Software, because you can't tell right now, but the three of us on this side have all enjoyed the Borderlands franchise in one way or another, and we've all consumed it. And one of the aspects of designing Borderlands, and you may be aware of this or not, but when they scrapped their entire design direction on the first game, I didn't know if you were aware of that when you joined up with them or not. Are you familiar with that story?
You're talking about the art direction?
Yeah, because they spent how many X amount of hours, and the original art director left the project because of just probably pure frustration and agony. Working with Gearbox and knowing that history, I mean, and this isn't to say it's a negative thing, because honestly it made the franchise into what it is now.
Oh yeah.
But does that ever stick in the back of your mind when you're building something, not just with Gearbox, I guess, but in the industry itself, that after all of the design you've done and all the passion you put into something, is there ever that concern that all of this work could be for naught? And how do you manage that?
Well, first and foremost, one thing that I always tell a lot of young artists is that, this is not your portfolio, right? Like, you're making a product. You're you're making a product. That's all it is. You're getting paid to do this, and it's very rare that you ever get like full 100% creativity on any project. Like, I got to experience that on Blood Rain and stuff like that because I was like the concept slash character artist, and no one really told me what to do, and our team was extremely small. But
Mhm.
but not really. After 20 plus years, I'm making a product. I'm a commercial artist. That's
Mhm.
that's what I am. That's
Mhm.
why I have
Mhm.
Dinosaur. If I want to do what I want to do and see my vision through, then I do it on my own. I don't, now granted, Gearbox is really good about that. So, the Gearbox that was then is definitely not the Gearbox that is now. Not saying that what they did was bad or
Sure.
anything like that. It was that's just a decision that needed to be made. Rage came out and showed their stuff,
Mhm.
and it was just like, oh crap, this looks great.
Yep.
And so they did what they had to do. And if I was put into that position, that wouldn't hurt my feelings at all. It would be like, okay, let's think outside the box. What do we need to do? Right?
Mhm.
It's a challenge, and I love challenges. Um, so I'm professional enough to not get my butt hurt for any of that stuff.
Mhm.
But like I said, that's one of the main reason I started Dinosaur, was because I just wanted to express myself in my own way. And it's called Dinosaur because at the time, artwork was changing, from what it used to be nice and low poly to like this hyper realism stuff, and I
Mhm.
felt like a dinosaur in my own industry. And so my friends and I just
Mhm.
started Dinosaur because that's what way we felt. And so we just wanted to we yearned to make games like back in the
Mhm.
day, like on Sega Saturn and stuff like that. And yeah, it's fun. It's
The days of
Yeah, we're
yore.
never gonna make like a Borderlands level project or anything, but
Mhm.
it's just like, we'll make something here and there, just for fun. We all have day jobs and we all work at our own studios, during the day. So this is just stuff
Mhm.
that we do for fun.
Sure.
No,
that's what it is.
yeah, great. Now, like I love hearing you talk about like where you are in life right now and the amount of confidence that you seem to exude about you just being you, and then comparing that back to you said like when you go to college and you were kind of anxiety ridden, you're worried about like being able to work from like just going from job to job, being able to like just be able to work. Like what changed that in you where you went from having, and not to say like anxiety ever fully goes away if it's an issue, but like you seem to have a much larger like amount of confidence and kind of security of self than you did when you're in college. Was there anything that was like crucial to that, or was it just kind of like a gradual build going through the industry that just got you to where you are now?
Well, one of the major things is I don't ever really give a fuck. Like, I just don't.
Hmm.
Um, but as far as like, and to this day, I'm introverted. I still have problem making eye
Hmm.
contact, and I play with my hands a lot. I fidget. I have this blanket that I'm constantly messing with. I wear my
Hmm.
hoodie. I always say that I hide my anxiety in my pockets. Um,
Mhm.
oh, I'm terrible with anxiety, but I'm extremely extroverted as well, within my limits. I do a lot of public speaking. I've done talks like at GDC and XDS, which is our external development summit that we do.
Awesome.
Um,
Hmm.
you know, I'm known, for being kind of loud at the XDS events. Like,
Hmm.
everyone knows when Gearbox is coming around because they can hear me and stuff. But I mean, the main thing that I learned, like when I was alone and all that stuff, I wanted to give
Hmm.
up. And I, s- and it was our second quarter, and I sat down in I don't know what class it was. It was probably like English or something like that. It was one of the fundamentals, and it was debate, I think. And so I sat down in class, and the first day, the teacher's like, "All right, I need you all to get in groups of like six or something like that." And so I was just sitting there, and I knew no one in class because this was a little bit more of an advanced class. So I was taking it with
Hmm.
people that were one quarter ahead of me.
Sure.
And just suddenly this one dude, this one Asian guy just goes, you're the last one, come on. And I was like, okay. And those guys became my friends. Like I'm still like my current roommate, is
Awesome.
from there.
Mhm.
And the other guy that started Dinosaur was from that exact group. And there's like all of them. I'm still friends with all of those guys. And so that kind of um put me at ease, and I was just like, yeah, you know what, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. And so it took a lot of work, but I'm not like, I'm not arrogant or anything like that, but I think a lot of artists do have a certain type of ego. You have to be kind of an ego. You have to have some kind of ego to make characters, especially characters, because you do put a lot of yourself into there, and a lot of characters you design are a reflection of yourself, and so there's always going to be a certain amount of ego in your art, and so I in college, I think one of the things that really started boosting my confidence, after I realized like it's okay, life goes on, right? Regardless of how I feel, life is going to go on. Either I'm going to be part of it or I'm not. Like that was the big thing, and I was just like, I'm going to be part of this. Uh, I started taking character design classes, color pencils and inks and all this stuff, drawing all these things with character turnarounds and stuff, and they started just hanging my stuff up around the art institute, and so that was nice because that was confirmation that I was doing something right.
Yeah.
And then I was
Yeah.
just randomly at the library, and I had a notebook, and on the back I had some drawings of one of the characters that I was drawing at the time. And I had this, I guess, I don't know what they're called. I guess it's technically a freshman. Since we're quarters, it's not really like that, but it was like the first timer freshman.
Yeah, red shirts.
Yeah. She walked up and she looked and she goes, "Oh, you're the artist." And I was like, "Huh?" She goes, "You're the one that draws this guy." And I was like, "Oh yeah." And she goes, "Oh, they gave us this tour, and they show us all your art, and like they were like talking about you and all this and that and everything." And so that was kind of like the first time where I was like, "Oh wow, I'm getting recognition." And then there was another event that happened, where I was just at the student housing, and there was a knock on the door, and it was a fashion design student, and she's like, "Hey, are you Jesse?" And I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "Hey, I heard they told me you're one of the best artists here. I want you to design a tattoo for me." And so I was just kind of like, "Oh, cool." Like, I
Aw.
that's kind of
Yeah.
because I got intimidated as hell, because in Dallas we had amazing artists, a bunch of my friends, they're amazing artists. So hearing stuff like that kind of helped. And so it's not necessarily, I'm anxiety driven, and I have imposter syndrome up the wazoo,
Oh
but
yeah.
it's and I'm always battling and always going up and down on this roller coaster, dealing with all that stuff. But when you get into management and stuff, you just can't be frail. You just can't at all. And you have to have a team that believes you and believes in you to follow you, and to follow your art direction, especially like me. I'm so out of practice, I don't really draw or anything anymore. I just build in 3D. So it's not like they can go to my art station and see these fantastic paintings and stuff like that. I'm more on the technical side of things. So so I have to be able to surround myself with very talented people, and I have to utilize them as my paintbrushes and tools to bring their artwork together, and bring the art style together into one unique vision, to make other studios want to hire them away. Like that's always been my thing, is like I want to come up with unique art visions that will make other studios be like, "Oh man, who did this?" Right? Like let's go look for their portfolio and stuff like that. But I also want to make it fun enough that people want to stay. And so you don't have room to doubt yourself. And if you doubt yourself, you go somewhere else and do that. You don't do that in front of your team. So when I'm here and I'm in front of like this, or in front of a crowd speaking or whatever, like there's no time to doubt myself. Like I have to cut the bullshit, and I have to just be like, I'm here for a reason. I made it this far for a reason. Let's go. Right. And just got to go, go all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
But
remember hearing once from a motivational speaker that you need to trust the footprints that you left behind you just as much as the ones that you haven't taken yet. And I'm hearing that in your speak right now. I mean, from the very beginning of this conversation, I mean, once again, I mean, tremendously inspirational, like stories that you bring to the table.
Yeah.
And we all appreciate that. I mean, it's just like when we talked to Josh Sawyer and he gave us a near-death experience story. It's the kind of stuff that you're just like, wow, I was not prepared to hear that today, but I'm happy that I did. And to go cliche for a moment, Jesse, and kind of in wrapping things up here, do you have a favorite character, and we'll also say, or a favorite game that you kind of always look back to fondly, and interested to hear your take on those?
Favorite character in general, or favorite character that I made?
Yeah, favorite character that you made. Yeah.
I always have an affinity for Ephemera from Blood Rain. Just I don't know, she's just fun. I think that was a lot of fun. Now, favorite character that I directed, that's coming up. I have a new favorite character.
Ooh.
To be announced.
Yeah, I think this one's gonna get some real good cosplay. I try and design my characters with cosplay in mind all the time.
That's awesome.
Favorite game is really tough because, well, the cliche answer is that, you know, it's difficult and I love them all. But that's not true. You know, we all work on games that we absolutely hate and stuff like that. Oh, actually, so liking characters, there's definitely different reasons I like certain characters. Like Ephemera, I don't know. There's just something about it. Whenever I see people cosplay her, I'm just like, yeah, that's really cool. I like her because she was like 100% me. Sort of like the publisher told me, make her sexy. And I was just like, okay, fine. I would have made her all emaciated if I could. But, you know, whatever. Like the design is still something I had a lot of fun. She was a huge technical challenge at the time. But I forgot. I always block out Star Wars Connect in my head. But I introduced a Gothic Lolita into the Star Wars universe. So that right there is another character I really enjoyed. Is just kind of a big FU, you know. I was like, fine, if I'm gonna work on this freaking game, like, you're gonna get a Gothic Lolita. And I did. No one questioned me. I made a badass piece of art, and everyone was like, yeah, she goes in. And I was like, cool. And they made her and took her in, and she's in there, a Gothic Lolita with a big old Death Star chest laser. And so I really like her. There's a couple other things in that game that I actually really like, where I was just venting a lot of frustration, but I'm not ready to talk about that stuff publicly just yet. I do talk about them a lot, just not on the record.
Smart.
And then as far as games go, I have different classifications for that. So like the most satisfying project that I've actually ever worked on might have been Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters was just very satisfying. It was exciting the whole way through. I never really felt a burn. It was just like, yeah, this is great. We're all making the best thing possible. Then there's the games that I actually enjoy playing, which is usually a toss-up between Ghostbusters and Blood Rain. Then there's you know, I'm very proud of what we did in Brazil with Finding Monsters VR. You know, won a lot of awards for that, and I think that was fun. And then, of course, like Desert Bus VR is, I'm proud of that simply because, you know, we did it for a charitable cause, and I think that it's real important for, what they do. The Desert Bus for Hope team does. And it was fun to finally revisit a game that, you know, was never released back in the 90s. And Penn and Teller are amazing people, and it was just a wonderful experience as well. But yeah, games that I made that I like to play, probably Blood Rain 2. Just, it's a lot of wacky fun with physics and stuff, and that never grows old. And Ghostbusters, just a great experience overall.
Yeah, I mean, it comes across that experience. I mean, so Joe and I didn't actually know each other initially when the video game came out. We would meet each other, I think, like a year later.
That sounds about right.
And we had never shared a word with each other, but we both had the exact same appreciation for Ghostbusters, the video game, when we began talking about it. And I always, to the front of my mind, I always just think of care, the amount of care that went into creating that game. I obviously want to personally thank you for, because it's there. You can feel it. You can see it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's the story.
Yeah,
It's the
man.
design, all of it.
Mhm.
It's just care cranked up to 11. And that's why fans love it so much. It's just a
Yeah,
beautiful thing.
we tried our best. Like we really tried our best, and we had some really good. We had a lot of ghost heads on our team that were in key areas. So like I pushed back real hard on some things that were mandated by Sony and them, because I just did not want to do them. Like I was like, no, that's stupid. You know, why are we going to cut out levels for the Xbox version? Like that's stupid. Why are we going to diminish the experience for people who just chose a different console? Like, no, that's dumb. You know, some people were like, hey, we need to make the traps bigger because we need to see them. And I'm like, well, they're going to look stupid when they go up and pick up this gigantic trap off the floor. Like, no, we're not doing that. You know, and it was just a bunch of stuff like that really you know, pushing back. You know, I the hardest I've ever worked was updating the Ecto One, right? Like originally I bought the reference from the Universal Studios Ecto, and that's what the one character artist, Austin Klein, he built around that, you know. And then of course when we release it, you know, the fans just hammer us for having the that Ecto, and it was one of those where it's like, whoa, like it's not done. And so, you know,
Yeah.
at the end of the project, I had a week left, and they were just like, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "I'm gonna go fix that Ecto." And I didn't get to do everything. Like it's missing a couple of vents and stuff. But you know, I had to make it. Technically, the grill is not correct because we didn't have the license for the caddy until at the very last minute. And we also didn't have the license for the New York license plates until the very last minute either. So and I'm talking like like last minute. Like we had already rendered out the cut scenes and everything. That's why in the intro cutscene, it's the Universal Studios. If I'm not mistaken, it's the Universal Ecto. Uh, and it's not really correct. And then if you watch it frame by frame, when the doors shut and you see the license plate, that
Yeah.
B on the Ecto 1B feels fake because they have to composite it in there at the last moment.
Yeah.
Like it was after it was all done and everything, like it was all rendered, like they had to go in there and add that in there because we just did not have that. So I fixed the Ecto without knowing if we were going to have the license or not. And I had two versions. I had one that didn't have any of the logos and anything like that. Like caddy logo was the absolute last thing that was greenlit. But I had my contingency plans of going and changing up like the tires and stuff like that. You know, I was just like, you know what, who gives a shit if this is like 8 years later. Get over it. Like
Yeah.
people change. Like, and that's the other thing too. I'm sick and tired. Like some of these ghost heads they're such sticklers for detail, and they're like, nope, and I'm like, it's been 8 years. Like, are they? You know, like you can't even really go to the store and get a ripstop jumpsuit anymore. Like Ghostbusters nowadays are not going to use ripstop. You know, they'll probably use Dickies. I don't know. They'll use something else. Something else. It's okay to change and evolve the brand. You just have to be respectful. And
Yeah.
and so it was like it was at that time that other studio in the Ukraine was pushing for a Ghostbusters game with they had that Chrysler 300 or whatever it was, and it was like all extreme and it was like post-apocalyptic, and the Ghostbusters had like mini guns that shot late, you know. And it was just like I was like, well, that's kind of cool, but it was just like that's not gonna you know.
Yeah,
And so
you're not killing the ghosts. You're capturing them. Right?
So they're already dead.
So at the last minute, you know, the last month or so, I was put in charge with a coworker named Josh Opel to decorate the firehouse. And so I was just like, okay, this is heaven, and I get to put in all these Easter eggs that I want. I got to fix the Ecto. That's why I took like the Ecto 2 doors. I freaking hate that car, and I built it and I put it in the back. I'm just like, that way, hey, it's back there, you know. The Ghostbusters, they're not going to use that same car. Why would you fucking have a 2? Like, I guess it's the second time the Ghostbusters came out, but it was just a movie tie-in for merchandise. That's all it was. It was disgusting. And so it was just like, it's like, all right, but instead of just totally ignoring that, I'm like, fine, I hate it personally, but I'm going to put it there for the people that do like it, because while I may hate it, that's not that I don't want to disqualify the feelings of the other people that hold nostalgia to it. Instead, I want to provide a natural evolution. And so since this was 1991, it was, you know, like 2 years after 89 or whatever. I put them back there. I'm like, okay, cool. Here's your nod. Here's your sign. Here's all that. It's just that they moved on. They did something else, and people freaking loved it. And I was like, sweet. That's how you handle that type of stuff. You
Yeah.
don't go in there and just kick the door down and say that was stupid. We're not doing that. Ignore it. No,
Mhm.
not with something like this. And I see a lot of franchises and stuff that do that. They're just like, this movie was stupid. We're gonna ignore it, and that alienates a lot of fans. And so we tried our best not to do it. Like, I'm very vocal about me not liking Ghostbusters 2 and all that stuff, but it's I had to think of the fans, because I am a fan, and I'm like, well, how would I feel if it's my favorite franchise and I like this one portion of something and it gets ignored, right? Like, they're just basically saying this sucks.
Yeah.
You don't pay attention to it anymore. And so, while I also believe that no one is, overwriting your childhood, you'll always have Ghostbusters 2. I'm trying to make something that's all
Mhm.
inclusive. So
Yeah.
that's why I put the Tully uniform up there with his earmuffs, just in case. We were at the last minute with him,
Mhm.
almost got him, but my contingency plan was, he's out sick. We've
Yeah.
crossed a threshold where he came back and he was like, hey, yeah, no, I want to be in the game. And so we were just like, at the last
Mhm.
minute, like, what can we do? And so we were deciding that we were going to take his desk and put it behind Peter's, back there with all the junk, and then you would just see like his hand basically just kind of come out and be like, hey, I'm back here working. Like, we were just going to get his voice recorded because we didn't have time to
Mhm.
do the face. And technically we did create the face, but it was
Yeah.
never approved. We didn't have time to go through the approval process, so we were just going to do like his voiceover
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But that ended up falling through at the last second, and we just couldn't get that in. There's a lot of stuff. This the whole reason Vigo is there was like, we don't want to ignore it,
Mhm.
but it would be funny if this demigod got just put here in the office, and he can't, he's powerless, and he just comments on what's going on, because he's just bored. Like, we thought that was funny. um there's just a lot of stuff that we did that was to celebrate the Ghostbusters as a whole.
Mhm.
I'm all about evolving. Like, I hate just repeating the past. And we had
Yeah.
some mandates, like we had to have, Stay Puft, we had to have,
Mhm.
but at least we came up with a narrative that made sense, right? It's like, okay, well, why are these echoes coming back? And it's like, oh, because this is the story, this is what's happening, there's a reason why these echoes are coming back. And you know it was a big effort by a lot of people that all love this franchise. um
Yeah.
I really like it. It's something I'm very proud of. Yeah, man, it's a trip. It was a wild ride, and there's so many stories to go out into that. I'd love to just sit down with ghost heads, like at a convention or that proton charging or something, and
Mhm.
just, I haven't had a chance to go out there, but if I go out there, I need to have like a panel or something where I can just talk for like 4 hours.
Hey everyone, still there? Well, it turns out so is Jesse Sosa. He's got a lot more in his mind, and he's going to tell us more about it next week. So we hope you come back for part 2 of this conversation.